Hello, trumpet players. Let's spend some time talking about my 50% rule. This is a replacement video for a video that I took down. Now, the reason I took it down was because it wasn't actually intended for YouTube, and the more I developed my, I guess you could call it a style, the more I realized that that video did not fit. So we're gonna redo the 50% rule. So let's talk about first, what is the 50% rule? Basically, the 50% rule says that at least 50% of your practice time should be spent practicing music instead of exercises. And I have to say it that way because some people think that music is whatever is written down. And no, that's not how it works. If you have, for example, scales are not music. Lip slurs are not music. There are some things that have a foot in both sides, like etudes have a foot in both sides. Those still fall on the music side. And when we look at the total picture, if you have exercises that are more musical, then the need to push the 50% thing becomes a little bit less important. But yes, generally speaking, we want to have at least 50% of our practice time going into music. That's the 50% rule. Now, the key word there is at least, right? Because you can, I love it when this happens, right? You got to have time in the day to do this. But I love it when I can do 25%, 20%, even maybe even 10% of my practice day going to exercises and the rest of the day practicing music. How wonderful is that? So we want to make sure that you understand that it's not just 50%. It's at least 50%. Okay, so now let's talk about why we do this. Because it's not enough, I don't think. I think people need to know, otherwise they're not going to actually stick to it. And my story with this goes all the way back to when I wrote my first book. Actually, it was the second book. The first book was a failure, and back in those days, I didn't tell people about it. So when the second book was taking off, and it took off right away from the beginning. I remember, I think I finished it like in January, March, somewhere around there. And then that following summer, I had a student that came back from summer camp, summer band camp, right? Came back and had copies out of the book I had it was my first book that was successful. And how in the world, I don't even know this, right? I don't even know how this was even possible. How in the world did someone come to their lesson with copies that were distributed at a band camp? And this is back when my manuscript, I didn't have a computer yet, so I was using a calligraphy pen for all the music, right? And someone had already, within the first year, illegally copied and distributed my book. And you have to look back and say, well, at least that's a sign that it's a good book and that people are actually using it and like it and stuff like that. So anyway, back in those days, I sent a copy of that first successful book, my second book, to a friend of mine in El Paso. And he liked it so much that that's all he did. And you would think that I would be honored by that, right? No, I never, ever, ever insinuated, ever, that that's all you should have been doing. And it nearly ruined him as a trumpet player. Now, at first, I didn't quite understand how that could happen, but even though, from the very beginning, I knew that it was wrong to just do those exercises. I never did that. Even I never did that, right? And I'm the one that wrote the stuff. There was never a time when that's all I did. When I made my changes, as soon as I could practice music, I started practicing music. And what I mean by that, if you're totally rebuilding, then just playing a note is hard enough, right? But within a couple weeks, I was already playing music again. So I already knew intrinsically, right, that that playing just exercises just wasn't a good idea. But this guy, he was already doing only exercises, and I think he did this for months. And then, um, and I think, if I'm not mistaken, it's been almost 35 years since this happened, I think. And it's, the memory of it is a little foggy. But if I remember right, after that, he didn't want to have anything to do with any of my books, right? And because, uh, and I can see that, right? Because, it was a disaster for him. But anyway, so I had that in the back of my mind. And then we head into the 90s. And during the 90s, I start participating on uh, these internet trumpet forums. And I knew that some of this stuff that these guys were teaching, and I'm not going to name names, and they know who they are. We've been all very openly antagonistic towards each other for years, right? So, but I knew there was something wrong with that approach. And it wasn't until about mid-90s, maybe 1997, around in that area, where I finally came up with the words. And that's what's beautiful about arguing with people, right? Is, especially for somebody like me, I'm not a talker. You wouldn't know that from these videos, but I don't really feel comfortable talking like this. These videos are a great example. It's not uncommon for me to make 5, 6, 7 different versions of these videos until I find something that isn't all that bad, right? I don't think my videos are all actually very good. They're informative, but in terms of quality, it is what it is. But um, but when you're arguing with people, yeah, you're forced to come up with ways to explain what you know in the back of your head. You just never had words for it. And it was in the process of arguing with some of these people that teach almost exclusively exercises. It was in the context of arguing with them that I finally understood exactly what it is that's wrong with not practicing music. And let's look at that, right? When we practice exercises, the whole point of the exercise is to take this out of the picture, take that out of the picture, and we're just going to focus on this one thing. That's what an exercise is. And that makes sense, right? We need that. If there's something that we're struggling with or something we want to improve, then we need to take all of this distraction out. Take this out of the way, take that out of the way so that we can focus on just that. The problem is that's not how music works. When you're performing music, and this is something I came up with in the mid 90s, and I sat down one day with a paper and a pencil and wrote down all the things that I could think of that we're supposed to be thinking about while we play a piece of music. Things like, so the physical stuff, right? Posture, support, tongue position, lip aperture, um, and then there's the musical stuff. We've got uh, dynamics, we've got vibrato, phrasing, um, stuff like that, style. And then we've got ensemble stuff where we have to be thinking about balance and intonation, and you get my point. And there was well over 50 things. When you're playing a piece of music, there's well over 50 things that you have to be doing and thinking about at the same time, and we just know that that's not possible. Those things have to be delegated over to your subconscious mind. That stuff has to come from the subconscious. And here's the thing, this is why we have to practice music. When you practice only exercises, you never practice using that subconscious part of your mind to do all of those things at one time. Let that sink in. If you only practice exercises, you're not spending any time practicing that process of thinking about and doing more than 50 things at the same time. And this is precisely why, and I've known about this phenomenon since I was in high school. There are some people who can do some awesome warm-ups, and you hear them. And this is how we know about this, right? You you go to the All-State auditions, and you have some dude in the corner warming up, and it's like, wow, beautiful sound, wonderful technique. But then they get to the piece of music, and for some reason it all falls apart. So, the exercises are important. I will never say that they're as important as the music, practicing music, uh, because they're not. You could get by without practicing exercises at all. The the reason why we do exercises is because it's a more efficient way to get that stuff done, right? And long tones is a great example. Long tones, you take all the technical stuff out so that you can just focus on your tone. And that's wonderful. We need that. It's the fastest way, the most efficient way to improve your sound. I actually, personally, I do long tones for other reasons besides just sound, but that is a big deal, right? However, without doing the musical stuff, you never learn how to put it all together. And see, here's the other thing. When I call it manhandling, right? If you try to manhandle the um the uh the different aspects of your musical performance, instead of letting them become more natural, more subconscious, second nature, whatever your favorite word is for that, um if you try to do all of that stuff consciously, it always falls apart. It always it's always prone to error, and you will not progress at the same rate as when you switch gears and learn how to trust. And that's a word that comes up in this context, right? You need to trust that the work you've done it actually works. Now, in order for this to be true, right, you have to learn how to practice correctly. That's the other thing. So this 50% rule is not as simple as what it sounds like, right? We we say 50% rule, and it's oh yeah, I know the 50% rule. No, actually, there's a lot that goes with that. The 50% rule implies that you know how to practice. And if you don't know how to practice, if you don't have any practice techniques, and your way of practice is to sit down and just try to get the music right, almost none of this is going to apply to you because you're none of the, so like doing the exercises. The whole point of the exercises is to push those things into your subconscious so that when you're playing music, they come out properly without you having to think about it. Let that sink in too, right? The whole point of the exercises is to push whatever thing that you're focusing on, push that as a habit deep down into your subconscious so that when you're playing music, it manifests properly without any effort on your part. That's why we do the exercises. So, talking about the long tones and getting a good sound. The point of the long tone is to make the sound push it so deep into your subconscious that no matter what the context is in the music, you're going to get a good sound. So this is going to assume two things. It's going to assume first that you're doing your long tones correctly. And it's going to assume second that the way you practice your music is efficient and effective. That's the word I was looking for, effective. Just trying to get the music right is not an effective way to practice. And all this stuff I'm talking about here now will break down if that's how you practice. I teach this thing that I call the art of accumulative practice. But that art demands that you use appropriate practice techniques to learn your music, that you use appropriate practice techniques for your fundamentals. And, if you're not doing that, so yes, it's one thing to say, okay, yes, I'm doing 50% of my time on music, but if you're wasting that time just trying to play the music, that's not good enough. This process of making things more second nature will break down. It's not going to happen for you. You actually have to use proven practice techniques. All right. So one more thing before we go on. So when you start to tap into the subconscious performance, second nature performance, all kinds of beautiful stuff will start coming out of your horn. This goes hand in hand with the video that I posted on the behind the wheel. Now the behind the wheel videos you can only access on my blog. Unless someone's sharing it or something. I prefer that you don't do that because I want to know, that people are coming to the blog to get that. I don't want any of that to go viral, I guess is what I'm saying. And one of the things that I talked about in this most recent behind the wheel video is the effects of practicing music that's too easy for you, or practicing exercises that are too easy for you. We want to be that person that everything is too easy. And you don't just get that by struggling through stuff that's hard. When we say too easy, and this is getting to the point, right? When we say too easy, what we mean is that just naturally, and when we say naturally, we're talking about the subconscious, the stuff is coming out easy. We don't even have to think about it. We don't even have to try. And so what happens when you start playing like that? It's not just that the stuff that you've worked on now starts to manifest. You have the extra benefit of stuff that you did not work on starts to manifest in your playing. I think if you want to be a great player, and this is true for every instrument, I think, if you want to be a great player, your goal should be, as soon as possible, getting to that point where almost 99% of what you do comes out of the horn. I like that word manifest. Manifests in your music without any effort whatsoever. And that's an indication that it's coming from your subconscious. Your subconscious mind is hugely more powerful, greatly more powerful than your conscious mind. Your subconscious mind is like some supercomputer. It can do so much. In fact, it's better than a supercomputer. Your subconscious mind, not your conscious mind. Your conscious mind is very limited. And that's why people who never make the switch to subconscious second nature playing have a tendency to break down in performances. And by the way, when I first submitted this, the first 50% rule video to this other guy's website, it was meant as a solution for stage fright. And the reason why it helps you with stage fright is because it moves all of this juggling that you do out of your conscious mind, where it's just not even possible to do it in the first place, to your subconscious mind, where you have all that power. And yes, when you do that, when you have this balance of music and exercises, that can go a long, long, long way towards eliminating whatever stage fright you have. Now, stage fright is a tricky issue because different people have different kinds of stage fright. Sometimes people call it stage fright when it's not. But there's a lot of stuff, a lot of performance issues that can go away once you get the music into your subconscious mind, so that it becomes effortless, it becomes natural, and you don't have to put so much thought into everything. Your thought happened earlier when you were practicing other stuff, okay? Anyway, so that's the 50% rule. That's the long explanation of how this thing works. It's probably one of the most important things I teach. I do talk about it in the one range book. Now, I think I actually went into more detail in this video than I do in the one range book, but it's in the one range book. And then almost every lesson, I mean, not every lesson, every student, we talk about this because it is so very important, you know? Anyway, if you have any questions about this, please feel free to ask. And, you know, I have so many people now across the world. That's the beautiful part of it, right? Internationally, people are coming up to me and saying, you know, this this 50% rule. They say this changed my life. And the same thing with some of the other stuff too, right? And this is all, I'm going to say it again, this is all in the One Range book. Talking about the 3 levels of rest, people say that changed my life. The 3 levels of rest, that actually can save people's careers. I've seen that happen several times. Anyway, so yes, this is one of those messages that people really need to hear sometimes, because this is the missing link in their practice time. It's what's been holding them back. You know, and once you make that switch and you start doing music, more and more music practice instead of exercises, it's like a rebirth of sorts, a musical rebirth. And you wonder, and you know, it's weird because when you have those kind of changes, after a while, you don't even remember that old life, right? It's strange. And it's such a powerful way to live as a musician. It's so very, very powerful. Because now that all that stuff has been automated, you can actually concentrate more on what you want to say instead of how you're going to say it. Anyway, I had already closed this video and now I'm like rambling on again. Okay. Once again, if you have questions, please feel free to ask. Otherwise, God bless you, and we'll see you on the next video. Thank you. Thank you for watching this video. I wanted to spend just a minute to let you know that there's a better, more convenient, more organized way to access all of these videos. We have literally hundreds of videos here on YouTube, and quite frankly, it's a bit of a mess. So, to make it a little bit more organized and easier for you to access what you want to access, I created a separate page, a separate area on my website. That's eddielewis.com. And if you go to eddielewis.com, click on the menu, click on videos. It will take you there. I have the videos categorized, and then within those categories, some of them, like the educational videos, you can click on it and go in there and look for the videos specifically that you're looking for. Okay? So go to eddielewis.com, EDDIELEWIS.com. Thank you very much.